The air in the Sable Divide was heavy with rot and the sharp scent of ozone, stinging the back of Marcus's throat as he sifted through the battered hull of a crashed dropship. He crouched low, probing the scorched ribs of the vessel, his gloves slick with condensation where the spongy alien moss crept up through ruptured seams. The hull's metal groaned under his weight, threatening to collapse further, but Marcus pressed on, biting back a cough as he worked his multi-tool into the warped housing of a power regulator. Every scrap mattered. If he failed to bring back enough salvage, his team's generators would sputter out, and in the Sable Divide, darkness was a death sentence. His visor flickered with a faint green blink, tagging the power regulator as he freed it from its mount. He wiped grime from his faceplate and tucked the component into his battered field pack, the motion practiced, almost thoughtless. His mind was already leaping ahead, scanning the tangled wreckage for anything else useful: a relay, a coil, a piece of undamaged ceramic. Then, a flicker of blue-green, sharp and alive, cut through the dull palette of destruction. It darted just at the edge of his vision, too luminous to be a trick of failing daylight. Marcus froze. His pulse quickened. He raised his battered carbine, the butt pressed tight to his shoulder, and edged forward, boots muffled by the yielding mossy ground. One breath, two. He swept aside a tangle of snapped cabling, eyes narrowing as he peered around a twisted support beam, scorched black by plasma fire. Beneath a slab of scorched armor plating, a figure shifted. At first, Marcus thought it was just another burned-out drone. Then the light moved, a pulse of bioluminescent color, subtle and impossibly beautiful, tracing the curves of a girl's skin. Alien, unmistakable. Her flesh shimmered with shifting patterns, like a living nebula, while hair composed of bioluminescent tendrils spilled across the blackened metal, glowing from deep teal to indigo in the gloom. She wore a cloak that seemed woven from liquid night, its folds catching stray motes of light, embroidered with sigils Marcus didn't recognize. Her eyes, bright as polished copper, locked on him. Pain creased her features, but her gaze was unyielding, fierce with the wild energy of a cornered predator. Marcus flicked open a scanner panel, letting the faint hum of medical telemetry fill his ear. Her vitals tumbled in angry red spirals. She was dying, pinned by the weight of the world itself. "Don't come closer, human," she warned, her voice trembling with pain, but sharp with defiance. Her accent twisted his language into something both melodic and edged. She forced her chin up, as if daring him to test her. He ignored her warning, lowering his weapon and stepping closer, eyes already assessing the slab pinning her down. It was nearly 1/2 meter thick, fused to the ground by the heat of re-entry, its edges glowing faintly with residual energy. He crouched, cataloging every bolt and seam, calculating the torque he'd need, the leverage points, the danger. She spat out a stream of threats, half-formed curses, and in a surge of pride, invoked her right to die with dignity, a phrase that made Marcus pause, just for a heartbeat. He shook his head, turning away to scan for parts in the debris field. "I don't leave anyone behind," he muttered, his tone final, already hunting through the wreck for salvageable tech. For hours, as the alien sun crawled behind sullen clouds, Lyra, the girl, watched him. Her suspicion never waned, but slowly the edges softened, disbelief overtaking the fierce hatred in her eyes. Marcus never tried to lift the slab by brute force. Instead, he scavenged relentlessly. A length of strut here, a hydraulic piston there, coils of cable ripped from the skeleton of the ship's landing gear. Each find was a small victory, his hands moving with mechanical certainty. He began to assemble something beside her, a device with the skeletal promise of hope. She glared at him, skepticism heavy in her every word. "You waste your time, human. That metal will not yield." Marcus didn't look up. "Not by itself, but together, we might get lucky." His voice was quiet, almost intimate in the hush between rain squalls. She turned her face away, but curiosity gnawed at her composure. When he needed to connect his jury-rigged exoframe to her suit's armor, he hesitated. "There's an access port," he said, voice careful. "But I need your help." She pressed her lips together, pride warring with the urge to see him fail. At last, with a small, bitter gesture, she pointed to a hidden seam just below her ribs. "Here, but if you damage it, I'll—" "I won't," Marcus promised, and set to work. His touch was gentle, all business. He interfaced with her armor, hands moving with deliberate care as he attached cables and adjusted servos. Each contact was a new affront to her dignity. Her people prized self-reliance above all else, and to accept help was to invite humiliation. Still, as the minutes crawled by and Marcus worked in silence, she found herself studying the lines of his face, the steadiness of his hands, the set of his jaw as he fought for her life, with the same tenacity he'd shown for his own. When the exoframe was finished, a harness of metal and fiber that looked skeletal but strong, Marcus checked each connection, then eased her into place. Their bodies pressed together, her heat radiating against him, her breathing ragged but determined. He climbed into the rig beside her, bracing himself against the slab's edge. "Activating lift on 3, he murmured, voice low, breath warm against her ear. His arms encircled her, hands gripping the controls. 1, 2, 3. The frame groaned, pistons whining as he triggered the lift sequence. The slab shifted, resistance giving way in slow, shuddering increments. Then, with a final desperate surge, it rose. For the first time, Lyra felt herself lifted not by her own strength, but by a human, a moment that upended everything she believed about power and pride. She sagged against him, breathless, her copper eyes wide with something that felt too much like awe. For a heartbeat, the Sable Divide seemed to hush around them, two survivors suspended in a world of ruins, the past and future trembling in the space between them. The exoframe bore Lyra's weight, but Marcus still had to guide it, muscles burning as he maneuvered through the treacherous sprawl of the forest. Each uneven step jarred the rig. Lyra's arms slung around his shoulders, her body tense with pain and vigilance. Mossy roots snaked across the ground, slick and unpredictable, while the warped branches overhead tangled the sky into a dim green maze. Every few paces, Marcus had to brace Lyra with his own body, shifting her balance, feeling the echo of her every wince. Sweat trickled down his back, the weight of exhaustion pressing in, but he kept moving, because stopping wasn't an option. Lyra's silence was not surrender. Her eyes, sharp and restless, scanned the shadows, her grip tightening whenever something rustled too close. At one point, Marcus stumbled, nearly sending them both sprawling, and cursed under his breath. Lyra's bioluminescent hair dimmed in warning, her voice a taut whisper, "Stop." "Listen." She pressed a trembling hand against his chest, steadying him as the forest hushed. A faint, rhythmic crunching, a patrol. Through a jagged gap in the underbrush, Marcus glimpsed glints of armor, mercenaries moving in tight formation. Their weapons bristled with scavenged tech, visors glowing red in the half-light. Lyra's mouth barely moved. "Hide," she breathed, urgency laced with fear. Marcus ducked low, pulling Lyra with him into the thickest shadows. The exoframe creaked, servo motors whining, but he willed it to silence. He pressed his back to a fallen trunk, Lyra folded close, her cloak thrown over both their heads. Heart pounding, he watched boots pass within arm's reach, one mercenary pausing, visor sweeping the ground. Marcus held his breath, felt Lyra's breath against his neck, hot, quick, alive. The patrol moved on, oblivious. The moment stretched, then snapped as the last mercenary vanished between the trees. Lyra let out a shuddering sigh. Marcus released her, but his hands shook. "Are you all right?" he whispered. I told you to hide sooner, she chided, but there was a flicker of relief in her copper-bright eyes. They pressed on, the tension between them shifting. Lyra's directions became sharper, her warnings quick and precise. There's a sensor tripwire left, she hissed once, and Marcus veered just in time, the exoframe's limb scraping a trunk instead of a nearly invisible filament. Keep your head down, she warned again, as a drone hummed overhead, its spotlight slicing through the gloom. Finally, spent and breathless, they found a hollow beneath a tangled nest of roots, a shelter carved by time and rain. The space was barely wide enough for two, the earth cool and damp. Marcus powered down the exoframe, its motors sighing into silence, and helped Lyra ease herself onto the loamy ground. He checked the battered rig, fingers probing for damage, but it had held, for now. He turned to Lyra, meaning to check her wounds, when a faint vibration shuddered through the earth. A shape materialized at the mouth of their shelter, ducking beneath the roots. Another alien, taller and broader than Lyra, with skin marked by swirling patterns that glowed a battle-hardened blue. His cloak was adorned with intricate sigils, authority and violence etched in silk. Tovan, Lyra breathed, the word edged with dread. Tovan's gaze flicked over Marcus with undisguised contempt, then settled on Lyra. Sister, you've let the human rob you of your end, he sneered, voice smooth as a blade. His eyes glittered coldly. You disgrace yourself, and our blood. Lyra's jaw clenched. I survived, by my own hand, not his. He crouched, looming. No, you survived by his hand. There is only one path left for you. Let me give you a swift death. Restore your honor. Marcus moved before he thought, stepping between them, his own frame a feeble barrier. She's not dying today. Dying. Not for your honor, or anyone's. Tovan's lips curled in amusement. You think you have a say, human? You meddle in what you do not understand. He looked past Marcus, meeting Lyra's gaze. You disappoint me, sister. I expected more courage. Lyra's eyes narrowed. You speak of courage, but who sabotaged the landing logs? Who rerouted the maintenance codes before our descent? Her voice was suddenly sharp, slicing through the tension. She blinked, memory burning behind her eyes. Those logs, I entrusted them to you. Tovan's smile faltered, just for a heartbeat. You misremember, sister. The crash was fate. No, it was you, Lyra whispered, voice raw with betrayal. With a snarl, Tovan lunged, blade flashing in the dappled light. Marcus tried to shield Lyra, but the strike came too fast. The blade sliced through the exoframe's support struts, severing cables in a shower of sparks. The rig buckled, collapsing under its own weight. Marcus and Lyra tumbled to the ground, tangled in twisted metal and fabric. The exoframe screeched as its power source sputtered, servo arms twitching uselessly. Tovan towered over them, blade raised, murder in his eyes. Lyra barked orders, her voice cutting through the chaos. Disengage the left actuator! Use it as a shield! Marcus fumbled, wrenching the broken actuator free. He hurled it at Tovan's legs, catching him at the knee. Tovan staggered, cursing, but recovered quickly, advancing with lethal intent. Lyra's hand gripped Marcus's shoulder, her words urgent. Overload the power cell! Now! She slid a control panel across the wreckage, her movements deft even through pain. Marcus didn't hesitate. He ripped the power cell from its mount and jammed the override, the device throbbing in his hands. Light built in his palm, a blinding electric glare that swallowed the shadows. Get down! He shouted, shielding Lyra with his body as the cell detonated in a burst of white-hot brilliance. The clearing exploded with light, burning away vision and sound. Tovan howled in fury, his silhouette flailing blindly as the world strobed with raw energy. Marcus seized the moment, dragging Lyra into the underbrush, her cloak snagging on roots and splintered wood. Every foot was a battle, her limbs heavy, his muscles screaming, the taste of ozone sharp in his mouth. Behind them, Tovan's enraged cries echoed through the trees. "You cannot run! I will find you!" Marcus ignored him, focused on Lyra's labored breath, on the desperate rhythm of their escape. "Keep moving," he urged, voice barely audible over the pounding in his ears. Lyra's hand tightened on his arm, her resolve fierce even as her strength waned. "Don't stop. Don't look back." Branches whipped at Marcus's face as he forced a path through the dense growth, guided only by instinct and Lyra's whispered directions. The forest seemed to close around them, swallowing the shouts and the chaos behind. Tovan's furious cries faded, replaced by the thundering of Marcus's heart and the ragged sound of survival. The chase had begun. They found refuge in a cave veiled by a curtain of vines, Marcus half carrying, half supporting Lyra into the cool darkness. His breath was ragged from the scramble through undergrowth, his arms trembling beneath her weight. Lyra's legs nearly buckled as they crossed the threshold, the last of the exoframe's ruined metal scraping against stone before Marcus lowered her gently onto the cave's packed earth. The space was small, its air sharp with the scent of mineral water and moss. Outside, Tovan's distant shouts faded into the hush of the night. Inside, the silence pressed close, a rare and fragile peace. Lyra slumped against the wall, skin dulled, her bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically. The exoframe was useless now, little more than a cage of battered struts and frayed cables. Marcus knelt before her, brow furrowed as he assessed the damage, her wounds, her shock, the way her hands trembled not just from pain, but from something deeper. Tovan's words still echoed in her mind, each one carving new fractures into the code she had lived by for so long. Strength above all. Endure or be nothing. Now those words felt like ashes. Marcus saw not a proud diplomat or warrior, but a wounded soul unraveling at the seams. He spoke softly. "Let's get you out of this," he said, fingers nimble as he unfastened the harness, careful not to jar her injured leg. She watched him, suspicion and exhaustion flickering across her face, but she didn't resist. He eased her from the ruined frame, laying each broken piece aside, then began peeling away her battered armor. The plates bore scorch marks and rents from Tovan's blade. Underneath, blood welled in ragged lines along her thigh and shin, already darkening her silk cloak. Lyra turned her face away, breath stuttering as Marcus dabbed at the wounds with a strip of cloth torn from his undershirt. "You do not have to," she began, voice brittle. He interrupted gently. "I know, but I will." He met her gaze, unflinching. "Let me help." Lyra closed her eyes and surrendered, the last of her resistance dissolving in the hush between them. It was not an admission of defeat, but a silent gesture of trust. Marcus's touch was careful, almost reverent, as he cleaned the cuts, applied a thin layer of salve from his kit, and splinted her fractured leg with branches and a length of torn fabric. He worked in silence, his presence a quiet anchor as she shuddered through each flare of pain. After a time, she spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "My people taught me to believe in strength, that to accept help is to become weak. But Tovan," he twisted those words, used them to justify ambition. "Betrayal." Her eyes gleamed with unshed tears, copper bright in the gloom. "If strength means nothing but cruelty, then what am I left with?" Marcus paused, hands stained with her blood, gaze steady and warm. "Maybe strength isn't just about what you can endure alone," he said quietly. "Sometimes it's about having the courage to let someone in, to ask for help, even when it costs you everything." Lyra gave a low, bitter laugh. "Easy for you to say, human. You live by different rules." He shook his head. "Not so different. Where I come from, honor is what you do when you think no one will notice. It's about choosing what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." He met her eyes, voice gentling. You trusted me. That's a kind of strength, too. Lyra studied him, the words working their way beneath her armor more surely than any blade. The silence stretched, filled only by their breathing and the drip of water from the cave roof. At last, she whispered, "You sound certain. I wish I could be." Marcus smiled, exhaustion etched into the lines around his mouth. "You will be. You're stronger than you know." She fell quiet, watching him as he finished binding her wounds. The pain receded, replaced by a strange, tentative hope. Tovan's betrayal no longer felt like the end of her world, but the start of something new, a chance to define her own code. When Marcus was done, he sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Outside, the wind stirred the vines, dappling the cave mouth with shifting patterns of moonlight. Lyra's voice was steadier now. "Tovan thinks he can shape the world with fear, but I will not let his treachery become our law." Marcus nodded, fierce approval in his gaze. "We can stop him. Together." Lyra reached out, her hand trembling as she brushed glowing fingers against his cheek. The touch was feather light, her bioluminescence brightening with something like promise. "We hunt," she declared softly. It was both a vow and a benediction, a silent promise in the darkness that neither of them would face what came next alone. For a moment, the cave felt less like a tomb and more like a beginning. At sunrise, they left the cave, Lyra's leg bound in makeshift braces and her body secured in a repaired exoframe. The morning light filtered through the tangled vines, painting gold across Marcus's hands as he checked the harness one last time. Lyra flexed her hands, settling her weight with a confidence born not from pride, but from shared purpose. The shame that had shadowed her before was gone. She looked at Marcus, her copper eyes clear. "Ready?" He nodded, tightening a final strap. "Let's move before Tovan's trackers catch our scent." They set off into the dew-laced forest, moving as a single unit. Marcus adjusted the exoframe's gait to match Lyra's instructions, each step deliberate but efficient. The land ahead sloped upward toward the distant ridge where the relay tower waited, their only hope for rescue. Their path twisted through dense brush and shadowed gullies, but Lyra's tactical sense transformed the wilderness into a living map. She pointed out hidden runes etched into bark, silent signals her people used to mark danger or safe passage, and showed Marcus how to read the subtle shifts in moss and stone that revealed an ambush. She leaned close, voice low and urgent. "My people use the high ground, always. If you see birds scatter to the east, expect a scout in the trees." Marcus filed every lesson away, but he had skills of his own. As they paused to check the exoframe's power reserves, he motioned Lyra over, crouching beside a downed branch. "Watch this." He twisted a coil of wire around a rock, then pressed a micro-emitter into the moss. "Sonic snare. Step within 3 meters, and it'll sound like a thunderclap. Not lethal, but it'll buy us time." Lyra's lips quirked in approval. "Cunning, for one without claws." She handed him a cracked disc from her belt. "A heat lure. Place it by water, and it'll draw every sensor drone in range." He grinned. "When you can't outmuscle them, outthink them." They moved as a team, weaving their skills together. Lyra set heat lures and mapped out choke points, her intuition anticipating her people's tactics. Marcus strung tripwires and arranged energy cells in shallow pits, creating a maze of diversions. When they heard the approach of Tovan's hunting party, shadows flickering between the trees, voices sharp with tension, they vanished into the undergrowth. The first trap triggered, a sonic boom scattering birds and sowing chaos among their pursuers. The hours blurred into a dance of evasion and pursuit, sweat and adrenaline binding them closer. During a pause to recharge the frame's cell, Marcus settled beside Lyra beneath the gnarled roots of a fallen tree. The forest was quiet, but tension thrummed in the air. "You fight with cunning. Lyra observed, watching as he repurposed a snapped branch into a shock spike. He glanced over, a crooked smile on his lips. You taught me how to see the land. I just bend it a little. She found herself admiring this alien strength, different from the raw dominance of her people, but no less potent. Perhaps there is more than one way to survive, she murmured. Their destination, the relay tower, stood atop a distant ridge, its silhouette stark against the sky. Marcus checked the horizon. We're close. If we can reach the tower, I can boost a signal. Someone will come. Lyra nodded, but her brow furrowed. Tovan will expect us there. They pressed onward, nerves taut, the climb growing steeper. As the ground rose, the forest thinned, exposing them to open sky and prying eyes. Marcus kept one hand on the exoframe's controls, the other on his makeshift weapon. Lyra scanned the ridge, her voice clipped. Movement. 2, no, 3 figures near the tower. Marcus's jaw tightened. He brought loyalists. They advanced cautiously, using every scrap of cover. The relay tower loomed above, ringed by shattered rock and the battered remnants of an old supply platform. Tovan waited in the shadow of the antenna, flanked by 2 loyalists armed with plasma blades and pulse rifles. The tension was electric. Every muscle in Marcus's body coiled for the inevitable fight. Tovan's voice rang out, mocking and cold. You come to beg for mercy, sister? Or will you watch your human die first? Marcus stepped forward, Lyra's hand resting on his shoulder. We're not here to beg, he called back. We're here to finish this. The loyalists moved first, sweeping in with practiced precision. Lyra barked commands, her voice a razor's edge. Shield, now! Marcus triggered the exoframe's power, angling the frame's arm to absorb the brunt of the pulse fire. The metal sizzled, energy splashing harmlessly aside. Lyra's tactical mind anticipated every move. Counter left, drop and roll. And Marcus obeyed, swinging the frame's arm to knock one loyalist off balance. The other loyalist rushed Lyra, blade raised. She twisted, pain forgotten, and Marcus caught the attacker's arm, redirecting the blow and disarming him with a wrench of the exoframe's servo. Lyra swept the enemy's legs, sending him sprawling, then retrieved his dropped weapon and tossed it to Marcus. Tovan, snarling, tried to bypass Marcus, seeking a clear line to Lyra. His eyes blazed with betrayal and fury. You shame us all! You stand with prey! Lyra faced him, unflinching. I stand with the strong, and you are nothing but a coward. He lunged, blade flashing. Lyra shouted, Marcus, now! At her signal, Marcus triggered the shockwave module he had wired into the exoframe's power grid. The ground beneath Tovan's feet buckled with a resonant thrum, destabilizing the rock. Tovan stumbled, arms pinwheeling as the earth shifted beneath him. Marcus seized the opening, vaulting forward. He tackled Tovan, pinning him with the exoframe's weight, wrenching the blade from his hand and pressing it to his throat. Tovan struggled, but Marcus held firm, the resolve in his eyes unmistakable. It's over, Marcus said, voice low but implacable. With Tovan subdued and the loyalists unconscious, Marcus hurried to the relay tower. He worked fast, fingers moving over exposed circuitry and cracked screens. Lyra watched his every move, trust shining in her expression. The relay sputtered to life, broadcasting a distress signal across the spectrum. Within minutes, the distant roar of engines filled the air. A human shuttle descended, landing with a hiss of thrusters and a squad of medics and troopers pouring out. They secured the site, cuffed Tovan and his loyalists, and swept Lyra and Marcus aboard. Inside the shuttle's medbay, the world seemed to pause. The harsh light softened as Marcus finished rewrapping Lyra's leg. She reclined on a cot, her bioluminescence a steady, gentle glow. For the first time in days, the threat had passed. Lyra turned her hand over, palm up, and reached for Marcus. He took it, his own grip steady and warm. Their eyes met, silent understanding passing between them. You've shown me that true strength is lifting others, she said softly, her voice rich with gratitude and something deeper. Not crushing them. Marcus smiled, squeezing her hand. We lift each other. Their bond was now undeniable, a bridge between worlds, forged in fire and trust, shining in the quiet calm of the shuttle as it carried them toward a new beginning. 3 months later, Marcus lived on Lyra's homeworld, enduring its dense gravity with the aid of a powered harness. The device clung to his frame in discrete segments, whirring softly as it compensated for every step, every movement. He leaned on the balcony railing overlooking the city, a tapestry of luminous towers and bioluminescent thoroughfares that pulsed gently beneath the evening sky. The citadel rose above it all, ancient stone and new alloys fused together, a symbol of the world's old codes and its tentative embrace of change. He heard the familiar rhythm of Lyra's stride before he saw her, confident and unhurried. She stepped into the open air, her new prosthetic leg moving with seamless grace, a masterwork blending her people's organic curves with human engineering's precision. The silvery limb caught the city's glow, shifting from teal to indigo in time with her bioluminescent skin. It was more than a replacement. It was a testament to everything they had endured, and everything they had built together. Lyra paused beside Marcus, resting her hand on his arm. Her touch was steady, grounding. You are tense, she noted, reading the tension in his jaw and the way his hands gripped the railing. He offered a rueful smile, not bothering to hide his anxiety. I'm about to stand in front of your council of elders and tell them their whole system failed because they can't read a data stream. He shook his head, releasing a breath. I was never much for public speaking. She arched an eyebrow, the corners of her mouth lifting in a wry smile. You faced Tovan and survived. The council is only a room full of old warriors and scholars. Most cannot even climb the steps unaided. Marcus laughed, some of the tightness leaving his shoulders. They can still exile me, or worse, you. Lyra's eyes glinted with certainty. Then stand with me. I am strong enough for both of us. They stood there a moment longer, the world sprawling out before them, two survivors on the edge of an uncertain future. Lyra's cloak fluttered in the breeze, the sigils of her lineage glimmering in the gathering dusk. At last, she squeezed Marcus's arm, her confidence bolstering his own. Come, it is time. The council chamber was a vaulted space, echoing with memory and authority. Elders sat in semicircular tiers, their eyes sharp, their faces etched with age and pride. Tovan stood near the center, flanked by his remaining allies, faces Marcus recognized from dossiers and long, tense nights of research. Lyra entered first, head held high, her prosthetic gleaming. Marcus followed, carrying a slim datapad loaded with weeks of evidence, flight logs, energy traces, encrypted messages, all painstakingly compiled to reveal Tovan's betrayal. A low murmur rippled through the chamber. One elder, his cloak heavy with ceremonial tokens, spoke with barely concealed disdain. Lyra, daughter of the Divide, you return from disgrace and bring an alien as your witness? You seek to overturn centuries of law with numbers and shadows? Tovan's voice was silk over steel. Her survival is a blemish. She consorts with the enemy and asks us to trust the word of a human. Lyra did not flinch. She bowed her head, acknowledging their judgment. I do not deny my shame. I survived when I should have perished. But in that survival, I found not weakness, but a new strength, a strength born of trust and of truth. Marcus met her gaze, then turned to the council. May I speak? His voice echoed, the accent foreign but steady. The eldest nodded, wariness in his posture. Proceed. Marcus activated the datapad, projecting crisp holograms above the floor. Here are the landing logs, altered before the crash. Here, power readings, showing unauthorized energy draws from the dropship's reserves. Here, encrypted transmissions traced to Tovan's badge, sent before and after the sabotage. He guided them through the evidence step by step, never rushing, answering questions with clarity and patience. Each fact was a stone in the foundation of truth. Tovan's face twisted with rage. He launched into denials, invoking tradition, loyalty, and the supposed unreliability of human data. His allies shouted, voices rising in a storm of anger and fear. You undermine the code. You would let outsiders judge us. You survived only by abandoning your people. Lyra stood tall, her voice calm and unwavering. I did not abandon our code. I reclaimed it. Strength is not cruelty. Honor is not silence. I was broken, yes, but I was also remade, because I dared to trust, because I let someone lift me when I could not stand alone. A hush settled over the room. Marcus could see the cracks forming in the council's unity. One by one, elders reviewed the evidence, their gazes shifting from Tovan's scowl to the quiet certainty in Lyra's posture. Arguments faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. As the council retired to deliberate, Marcus and Lyra retreated to the citadel balcony. The city pulsed below, a living constellation. Marcus leaned heavily against the railing, his harness humming as it compensated for gravity's weight. His mind churned with doubts. Had he missed something? Was the truth enough? Lyra joined him, her presence a balm against the uncertainty. She stood close, silent at first. When she finally spoke, her voice was stripped of all pretense. I am not afraid to die, she admitted. Not anymore. But you have shown me something I did not expect. You made me afraid to be vulnerable, to let another see my weakness and trust them not to use it against me. Marcus turned, searching her eyes. You were never weak, Lyra. She smiled, gentle and sad. I thought I had to be unbreakable. But you... Her glowing fingers traced his cheek, a caress that sent warmth through him. You taught me that strength is not standing alone, but letting yourself be held. She leaned in, pressing her lips to his, a kiss that tasted of hope, of trust, of belonging. The city's glow flickered behind her, painting their shadows as one. In her arms, Marcus felt truly at home, the weight of the world lightened by the promise they'd forged together. At dawn, the council delivered its verdict. Tovan was guilty, not just of betrayal, but of corrupting the code. The chamber was hushed as the oldest elder rose, her voice solemn. Tovan, you are stripped of rank and name. For the twisting of tradition, you will know exile and servitude beyond our walls. You are dead to the code you sought to bend. Her words cut deeper than any blade. In the silent expanse of the council hall, Tovan's head bowed, shoulders trembling beneath the weight of his disgrace. For his people, exile and servitude were a fate worse than death, a living erasure. The acceptance of Marcus's evidence marked a turning point. For generations, law had been woven from memory and ritual, but now the chamber's ancient stones echoed with something new, a recognition that truth, measured, tested, and shared, could reshape tradition. As Tovan was led away, the council did not look at him. Instead, their eyes lingered on Lyra and Marcus, symbols of a world in transformation. Outside, morning stretched across the citadel's spires. Marcus and Lyra stood together on the familiar balcony, the city below radiant in the fresh light. For the first time since his arrival, Marcus felt the world breathe easier, a pressure lifting as if some unspoken pact had been sealed. The luminous thoroughfares pulsed with early activity, colors shifting as new day crept over the horizon. All around, there was a sense of things beginning again. Marcus leaned on the railing, the harness at his waist humming quietly to offset the world's stubborn gravity. He gazed at the city, watching the light dance across glass and stone, and let himself feel the rare certainty of hope. Beside him, Lyra traced the balcony's edge with her fingers, prosthetic leg moving in silent rhythm. He broke the silence first, voice tentative but laced with wonder. What now? His question lingered, heavy with possibility and the memory of all they'd endured. Lyra's answer came with a steady conviction, her eyes never leaving the glowing city. Now comes the real work, she said, restoring trust, teaching our people that strength and honor must serve truth, not blind tradition. She looked at Marcus, her copper gaze unwavering. The code survives when it bends to what is right, not to what is easy. He absorbed her words, feeling the magnitude of what they had begun. Do you think they'll accept it? He asked quietly. Change, I mean. Not everyone wanted Tovan gone. She considered, then nodded. They may resist, but now they have seen what cannot be unseen, a council ruled by truth, not fear. They will remember who spoke for them, who stood up. A gentle breeze carried the city's morning scents, wet stone, blooming vines, the faint spark of ozone from distant energy fields. Marcus watched the sun crest the horizon, painting the towers in shades of rose and gold. For the first time, he felt the world's promise as something real and within reach. Lyra's voice softened. There is something else. The council made their decision about you as well. You are to be named Arbiter, technical advisor to the council, with a permanent seat among us. She smiled, mischief flickering in her eyes. They could not ignore your part in unmasking Tovan. Or the strength you showed standing with me. Marcus blinked, surprised. Me? A seat on the council? He laughed, shaking his head. I still get winded climbing these stairs, you know. I doubt they're ready for a human's opinion on tradition. She moved closer, slipping her hand into his. Perhaps that's exactly what we need. A little less certainty, a little more questioning. Her thumb brushed his knuckles, an anchor and an invitation all at once. He squeezed her hand, voice touched by humility. I might never fully belong, not to your people, not to your history, but I belong here, with you. Lyra's expression turned gentle, her bioluminescent skin glowing faintly in the dawn. You belong, Marcus. Our worlds are joined now, through trial, through loss, and through love. They stood side by side, letting the moment settle. Marcus glanced down at their entwined hands. So, what's my first duty as arbiter? He asked, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Lyra's answer was simple, her words full of resolve and hope. Help me build a new code, a new future. Together, there is much to unlearn and much more to discover. He nodded, heart swelling at the enormity and intimacy of her invitation. Then let's get to work. The city sparkled beneath them, alive with the first rush of day. Side by side, Marcus and Lyra faced the dawn, ready to shape the destiny of two worlds. Their love was the bridge, a living promise binding tradition to truth, solitude to unity. Whatever storms might come, they would face them not as outcasts or conquerors, but as partners, building something new with every step into the light.